Hi everyone, I'm Brandon Averill, one of the partners at AWM, where we advise people in creating multi-generational flourishing families so that we can solve that shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves financial epidemic. And this is a front row seat with AWM's Chief Investment Officer, Justin Dyer, and myself, as we discuss some of our clients' most pressing financial questions. This is AWM Insights, and let's dive right in. Justin, welcome back. Obviously, we took a little deviation last week, got into a little Ukraine and what's going on more specifically in the world today, but we're going to jump back on schedule here. Kind of going back a couple weeks ago, we talked about if you do decide to hire that advisor, where do you actually go? Where can you access these people to help you out with your finances? And I think we had some fireworks. It was a lot of fun, but we're going to turn now a little bit over to, not only where do you go, but once you get there, if you decide, hey, I want an independent firm, I want an independent advisor, or, for some reason you mixed up our messages and you're headed to the wirehouse.
Let's hope we're not that far off point.
Yeah, right. When you get there, what should we be looking for? Because just being an independent doesn't mean that there's a high level of competence there. You still need to evaluate whether those advisors are a good fit for you. So let's dig in today a little bit about, what makes an advisor competent, what makes them a right fit for you. We know there's a ton of financial advisors out there. I think last I checked even, and we'll probably get into credentials here pretty quickly, but the FINRA website, so that, and broker check that we sent everybody to last time, I think they list over 140 designations. So how do we sort through this world, Justin?
Well, part of the problem is probably no one or very few people actually know what FINRA is. So FINRA stands for Financial Industry Regulatory Authority. It's what's called a self-regulatory organization, somewhat lives under the auspices of the Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC, which you're probably more familiar with. So that's almost one of the issues right there. Like unfortunately, the financial services industry is it's in high demand. It provides in aggregate, it provides a really good service, but there's limited regulations in some cases. There's extreme regulations in other cases. And, really getting into this topic specifically, there's no restrictions on truly who can call themselves a financial advisor. There are some really kind of bare bones restrictions and some licenses you need to actually either sell investment products and get a commission from it, or actually provide advice and charge a fee for that. But those exams are super, super basic. It's like a 2-3 hour exam, pretty easy to knock out. And those aren't the things that people really go to assess competency. So, how should we cut through all this noise? Not a straightforward answer, but one place to start is designations. Unfortunately, like you said, Brandon, there's 140 of them out there. You can probably get rid of 135 of them. They're just meaningless. Unfortunately, what happens in our industry, because it's such a noisy field of kind of no barriers to entry, people go and pay basically for this alphabet soup of designations at the end of their name, and it's super easy. Most of these, and we'll get into the important ones, at least in our view, and definitely this is backed up by kind of real industry standards. But a lot of the times, a quote unquote financial advisor can just pay, whatever, $500, $1,000. The price is all over the place. Go and kind of sit down and take a super easy test for 1 or 2 hours, and they get a designation, and they slap those letters at the end of their name, and no one really stops to ask, does this actually mean anything? Or very few people actually stop to ask and ask the question, do these actually mean anything? So cutting to the chase, really what the more important designations are your certified financial planner. That's kind of the table stakes too, I would say. This is your general practitioner. Hey, we know a lot we know a lot about a number of different topics. We're not necessarily experts in any one of those topics, but we have a really good understanding of, retirement planning, taxes, investments, et cetera, all these core competencies within the study or the subject of financial planning. And then you can get your subject matter expert type designations, your CPA, certified public accountant. Obviously, that's your tax expert, chartered financial analyst, or CFA. Those are really the experts on the investment side of the equation. CPWA is something we actually put a lot of stock in. A lot of our team, Brandon, including you, has that designation. And really, what that is it's similar to a CFP, but it's taking it to the master level, right? You're really diving in deep for much more of the high net worth, ultra high net worth space where estate planning, taxes, those type of subjects become a little bit more complicated. So in our opinion, those are really the four that truly mean anything, and almost anything else can be kind of thrown out of the equation from a competency standpoint.
Yeah, and I would say this isn't only just our opinion, right? I think there's somebody in our industry, Michael Kitsis. He produces a lot of content, for advisors, for consumers as well, and he actually does a fantastic job of breaking down all of the designations. So far more than these four that we've indicated. So, definitely encourage anybody to, we'll link to the show notes how to get to his website, but he walks through all the designations and what they are. And, I think the CFP, for instance, like you mentioned, baseline, Eric's fond of, really being opinionated on this, that if you don't have the CFP, just don't let them through the door. And I think he says that tongue in cheek, but the reality is, it shows that you're at least willing to do the minimum. And let's be clear, there are a lot of boneheads that have the CFP as well, yeah. Right? Like there are some people that really don't know what the heck they're doing and they've got the CFP. So you can't just rely on designations alone, right? There are CPAs that don't know the tax code. It's been so long. There are CFAs that probably have no idea about financial planning because it's mostly an investment designation. So you get the beauty of people like you, Justin, who, marry the CFP and the CFA and you become a, rocket scientist of sorts in the financial world. But, I think, we got to go beyond these designations, right? They're a starting point, like you said. And what, I would say the next evolution is, okay, let's make sure that they've at least put the work in. Let's make sure they have a dedication to their craft at some level. They pursued one of these designations that are worth something. And then let's move on. Let's move on to, does their process actually work? How do I evaluate that? Is it based in evidence, or is it more of a salesman type philosophy? And then make sure that it matches your philosophy. So are you looking for investments only? Do you think that the way the world works is, if you're a tarot card person, you're gonna go get your horoscope read. Maybe you're okay with the prediction of the markets and you don't really need evidence. Or are you looking for something that has a proven track record of success? It's not somebody that's trying to sway you one way or another with some fancy predictive model or something like that? Or are you looking for integrated services? Are you looking for a holistic plan? You want somebody that you can go to that's not just going to tell you about some hot stock, but is rather going to lay out, hey, this is what successful financial planning looks like. This is how we're going to make you a successful financially overall. And then fee structure, like how do they charge? Does that resonate with you? I think those are all things to start to consider when you start to look like, hey, does this philosophy make sense to me? Does it seem like we're on the same side of the table? And what am I looking for? Holistic, investment only, taxes, etc. Obviously, we're opinionated on what works for most people, but maybe talk about that a little bit, your opinion on that, Justin.
Yeah, definitely running with that. The integrated aspect of it, just looking for investment advice. Hey, it's not terrible, but it's not complete in our opinion. And I'm saying this as the investment person on the team, the investment guy. We love to say, and I think it's a really powerful statement if you think through it. You have one net worth, you have one effective tax rate. Your planning, your engagement with an advisor should be oriented to maximizing both of those two things. If you take that a level further, a level below, down, whatever you want to say, you start to see that is investments, that's income, that's charitable, that's insurance, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, all on down the line. And just only focusing on investments, yeah, maybe the guy's good, or maybe, they have a good year and you get a good rate of return, but are they doing that in a tax efficient manner? If you're looking at things in isolation and not taking all this other stuff into account, you're missing something, right? And so thinking about this in an integrated, individualized, really holistic manner is incredibly important, incredibly powerful. It's a little bit more nuanced and complicated, right? It's really easy to get your statement or look at your investment performance and, oh, there's my performance, whatever, 5, 10%, 20% performance. Great. Well, what is that on an after-tax basis? What does that do to the other aspects of my life? Are there some charitable opportunities that we could have taken advantage of, et cetera, et cetera? So there's just more to it. And you can really maximize your overall wealth by having an integrated approach. The other thing I definitely want to hit on, especially from an investment standpoint, is the crystal ball predicting the future comments you make. It is astounding to me still in this day. I feel like it's such a cognitive dissonance at such an astounding level where it's common acceptance, or at least it seems like common acceptance to me, that no one can predict the future, yet people still constantly try and do that. One of the things we always try and touch on, hey, what's going on in the world today that is potentially relevant to this overall, the topic that we're talking about on the podcast on any given week. This is a real broad topic, so it's hard to find something to pinpoint on it, but we talk about the noise of the financial media or media in general. And that's such a perfect example. You go on to, whatever, Yahoo Finance, Bloomberg, every single day you can almost find an article about somebody who, maybe out of one side of their mouth say we're not predicting the future, but out of the other side of the mouth, like they can't help it. They want to try and predict the future. And it's such an unproductive, conversation to have as a society. Like we just know we can't predict the future. We know we can set ourselves up and we can plan for uncertainty, and that's what you should do. But don't go down this route of reading the tea leaves and predicting what's going to happen tomorrow. I mean, just think about the last 2 years. How many kind of out of left field things happen? A pandemic, a war in Ukraine, lockout lasting much longer than we thought it was going to last. So just all these little things kind of factor into it. And I would say too, by definition from an investment standpoint, crises are what drive large contractions in the market. And by definition, a crisis is almost unpredictable. I don't know if it's clearly defined like that anywhere, but a crisis wouldn't be a crisis if everybody knew it was coming, So anyway, a little bit of a tangent there, but it's obviously something I have strong opinions on. So yeah, don't go down the investment only route unless you're really confident that that's all that you need. And thinking about things in an integrated fashion really will provide should provide, we got to always qualify things, should provide substantial value over the long term.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Justin. I think, the last piece that we'll leave everybody with high level, and then we'll get into some takeaways. But, okay, great. We've gone through this process. We've started with the designations. We've weeded out probably 90% of people because they're lazy and won't go get the designations. And we've landed on, okay, I've got a CFP. There's CFAs on this team. They provide holistic advice. I'm sitting pretty, and I'm now into 3 or 4 different groups that have all those qualifications. the last layer that we would advise people is, do they actually work with somebody like you? And we see this all the time. We have a lot of respected colleagues throughout the financial industry. I'm in a study group with several of them, very, very high quality firms here in Southern California. And they're really good at some things that we aren't, or working with certain types of people. And then we happen to be, experts in working with a certain kind of clientele as well. So I'll talk for instance, if you are a professional athlete, you don't want to go to a firm that's never worked with professional athletes, even if they have all the designations. Their business model is awesome. Their philosophy is great. The problem is there are just certain nuances that are gonna get left on the table. There are clients that probably are much better fits for other firms than us. Athletes happen to be one of our specialties. So you want to find somebody that, just because, if nothing else, they just work in it day in and day out. They may be more familiar with duty days. They might be more familiar with your, MLB 401k plan, or the NFL, pension plans, or the PGA plan. Those are all things that we're intimately involved with. And so we just may know some of the nuances a little bit differently. I thought this analogy was fantastic, but, if you were about to have heart surgery, how do you go about finding the right surgeon? You can go to the orthopedist that fixed your elbow, or, go to the psychiatrist that maybe worked with your brain a little bit. No, you're going to find the best heart surgeon out there, even though that orthopedist might be the best in the world at what he does. So I think this is kind of that last filter, one of those last filters that gets you into a really good spot.
I want to add don't want to say it's the most important, but in some ways it is. Use your BS meter. I mean, so often in financial services, because the low barrier to entry, you end up getting very good polished salesmen, but not competent advisors. And, I think humans or most humans are pretty good at fleshing that type of stuff out. Is this somebody who you can just trust and you get a good gut feeling with after you've checked a lot of these more qualitative or quantitative type boxes? And at the end of the day, this is about an important and long-term, long-lasting relationship. And if there's anything kind of on that last, more interpersonal type level, that topic where there isn't that connection, there's a little bit of a BS meter or a question in the back of your head, that's a potentially red flag there, at least a yellow flag, because you want this to be a long-term relationship. A good advisor will or should add increased likelihoods of successful wealth generation over the long term. And one of the key components in actually realizing that is having a good personal relationship, in my opinion, with your advisors.
Yeah, no doubt. And I would say, if people have been listening to this podcast and listened to us talk for a while, and it's resonating with you, then I think we just sum it up in a few things. Number one, seek out an advisor that avoids market timing, avoids active trading and selling performance, right? Rather, what you should be focused on is developing, an advisor that's helping you to develop a solid financial structure, that's focused on tailoring to your priorities. We've talked about that a lot, keeping costs and taxes low, and then ultimately working with somebody like you, because that's going to, ultimately, that's going to put you in a position where you guys are really working together on a systematic approach that's going to give you so much higher likelihood of financial success and wealth building over time. So we'll close out here, but before we close out, I've mentioned a few times over the past few weeks, but we got a new number that we're going to be texting out some updates on. You'll learn more about the podcast there. We're going to be giving out some swag, etc. But go ahead and text me at 602-704-5574. Text is actually coming directly to me. I'll actually respond back to you. It's not some phantom bot out there in the world. There is a little automated piece of it to get you onto the list. But we're looking forward to your questions and feedback directly. So shoot me that text. Again, 602-704-5574. You can do the little light bulb emoji, throw insights in there. That's how we'll know how I'll know that you guys learned about the number from this podcast. So anyways, until next time.
The information in this podcast is educational and general in nature and does not take into consideration the listener's personal circumstances. Therefore, it is not intended to be a substitute for specific, individualized financial, legal, or tax advice. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a final decision.